world is obsessed with big. You know, dream big, go big, the bigger the better. But today, I want to ask you, isn't it actually all the small things that matter most? For lots of you in the audience, you know, you'll be practitioners, you'll know that it's the everyday little habits you can get a patient to change that ultimately changes their health. Or what about just you and I walking down the street and someone smiles at you? That one small smile can just change your entire day. Or we're all Brits, you know, sat on the couch, someone says, you know, loved one, do you fancy a cup of tea? That little cup of tea can mean the absolute world to us. Small. Small has the power to transform moments, to transform lives. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk to you today about, the power of small. And in particular, these teeny tiny, I mean, they're so small you can't even see them with your naked eye, but they're living in each and every one of us. They're on us, they're everywhere. And I'm going to tell you about the incredible impact that they can have on our overall health and well-being. So what am I talking about exactly? Alana gave a few spoilers. I'm talking about our gut microbiome. I will take you through I'm going to make sure I leave no man behind because this is a bit of a science topic. We've taken a bit of a turn now, but I'll make sure, no one gets left behind. I'll give you all the definitions, but for now, I'm just going to kind of set the scene a little bit more because, as Alana said, like gut health, and you know, she's really banging on the drum. It's making waves. We're starting to hear more and more about it. And actually, the gut microbiome is kind of, in simple terms, being really referred to as gut health. And a quick search of these nowadays brings up over 43,000 results on Google alone, and that's just in the news section alone. And these are just some of the headlines. Some of you might be sat there scratching your heads, dietitians in the room, you might have patients coming up to you, you know, going like, is my gut health okay? Everyone's telling me I should be very concerned about this at the moment. You know, they might say, what should I be eating? Should I be testing my poo? You know, it's starting to get a little bit out of hand, but is it? Because I don't think, you know, as a nutritionist of over 10 years now, I've seen diet fads come and go way too many times. I think Alana and I were talking about the cabbage soup diet just now as well. Luckily, we're not in that ballpark, and I don't think, even if it's going to be called a fad, it's not going anywhere. And for this one, it's absolutely grounded in the science. But all that this media kind of hysteria around gut health, it's just simply becoming because the science has boomed. In the last 20 years, you know, we just thought the gut microbiome was merely involved in the digestion of food. But we're now actually discovering that it could unlock so many of the health, it could be the key to unlock so many of the health concerns that we experience today. But when I say that we're really only at the tip of the iceberg, that this is like where the publications are coming, and you'll see it's really only in the last 10 years. So there's still so much unknown about this space, but it's incredibly exciting. And for me, I'm biased, but I really do think it's going to be the cornerstone of modern medicine going forward. So I promised you I wasn't going to leave a man behind. So welcome to the gut glossary. You're all going to be pros by the end, I promise. So first up, microbes. What are they? Well, they are the population of microorganisms. You've probably heard of bacteria the most, but it's also viruses, archaea, fungi, and they live in and on us. They're literally everywhere. They're on the surfaces. They're flying around. And your microbiota, and your gut microbiota specifically, is the community of these microbes living in your gut. And as Alana said, you know, when we think of our gut, people are like, oh, I've got a bit of a gut at the moment. They're always pointing towards their stomach. But your gut is everything from your mouth all the way through to the exit at the other end. And this is the home to your gut microbiota, all of those trillions of microbes thriving in their own ecosystem. Now, for any scientists in the audience, your metabolome, this is getting everyone very excited in the space. This is essentially the compounds that your microbes produce. And this is the idea that it doesn't just matter about who's living in your gut, but it's more about, like, what are they doing? So you can kind of think of your gut microbiota as, like, the members club. But when you want to know, you know, the juicy stuff of, like, who's doing what, that's your metabolome. That's where we're getting really excited. And then your microbiome. So microbiota, microbiome, they sound really similar. They're often used interchangeably, but they are different. So your microbiome, that is everything in the environment. It's all the microbes, it's the genes that comprise them, as well as those byproducts that they produce. So You're all pros now. I can go off and say all these terms, and you're going to stay up to date with me. But, I promise I'll keep things as simple as possible, as she says. And again, another scientific slide comes up. But I'll do my best to explain. So why am I and the world at the moment, at least the world that I live in, obsessed with the gut microbiome? Well, as I said, we used to just think it was merely involved in the digestion of food. And yes, your microbes absolutely do that. So Alana taught you about fiber and why it's so important. And as humans, we can't digest fiber. So when we eat it in the form of all these delicious plants, it stays intact throughout our digestive system until it reaches the colon, where the majority of your microbes live. And they then start breaking down the fiber, and they produce these really useful substances called short-chain fatty acids. And short-chain fatty acids are being extensively researched at the moment, and they're being seen as very important as to why we see so much effect when we do kind of look after our gut health. They seem to kind of be leading the way in terms of the mechanism of action through which gut health can really produce phenomenal, like, systemic effects beyond digestion. Your gut microbiota and the microbes, they also synthesize certain vitamins. They'll also help you absorb nutrients. And then 4 and 5 are where things get more exciting. So your gut microbiota is really involved in protection and defense. So put really simply, your good bacteria in your gut will compete with your bad bacteria for space and nutrients. They'll even produce like antimicrobial substances. So even if you do fall ill, they're going to help you fight that infection. And then number 5, your gut microbiota is really the powerhouse of your immunity. So often, we just think that our immune system just kicks in, cold and flu season's upon us, is that kind of time. But actually, it's constantly working in the background, and it's your gut microbiota that is really the powerhouse for that. Around 70% of your immune cells sit within your gut, and they are constantly talking to your microbes that live there. And I'm going to delve into that gut immune axis a little bit later. Now, the extent, so I know you're all very like, okay, they're doing a lot. They absolutely are. And so you're like, okay, well, how do I get a good-looking gut microbiota? Well, as Alana said, nobody's gut microbiota is the same. Your gut microbiome is completely unique. It's as unique as your fingerprint. So, look to your person to your left, look to the person to your right. You will only ever have around 40% the same microbes living inside of you as another person. And as she said, that's even true for identical twins. So if we were to line up, so if we were to say, okay, what's a healthy gut microbiome look like? In the research, we can't say what it looks like because it's completely unique. But one thing, it is a miracle, that scientists agree on in this space is that there is a characteristic that we see for all healthy gut microbiomes and individuals that are healthy, and that is diversity. And the way I love to describe this is with a rainforest. So, your gut microbiome, it's its own ecosystem living inside of you. And what you want it to look like is a rainforest, filled with loads of different plants, species, all flourishing together, one that's very much in harmony and in balance. If you then have this ecosystem to begin with, and you're hit with a challenge, so say you take a course of antibiotics, life-saving, incredible medication. However, they won't just take out the bad bacteria living in your gut that is causing you the problem, they'll also start wiping out some of the good. Now, if you have that rainforest to begin with, and you take a course of antibiotics, and, the antibiotics come along, maybe take out a few plant species, a couple of birds, these kind of things, you're not going to notice so much, and you're going to be able to bounce back far quicker. Now, for me, I live in London. My back garden, don't look like that, I'll tell you that for free. I've got like a mere patch of grass outside. Now, if I take a course of antibiotics and that patch of grass goes missing, I'm massively going to notice the difference. And this analogy, this idea of this lack of diversity, this kind of imbalance in the ecosystem, is what we see in a particular set of, like when we look at patients and their gut microbiomes. So for people with colorectal cancer, obesity, functional gut disorders, they have this imbalance and lack of diversity when we look at their gut microbiomes. And this is really exciting for us. We can start saying, okay, if we do see this in these patients, if we can change their gut microbiomes, will we see better patient outcomes? And this is kind of where the research and all the excitement in terms of gut health being kind of new in medical treatment is really exciting. But, a big but, as I said at the beginning, we are just at the tip of the iceberg with this stuff. There's so much we still don't know in this space. For an individual that is, or a patient with these conditions, yes, their gut microbiome looks different, but because of the nature of the studies that we're doing, we don't know whether or not it's the gut microbiome that has potentially caused or at least helped the development of the disease, or if the disease itself has changed the gut microbiome composition. With someone with a diagnosis of cancer, for example, they then have more medication, their appetite, their dietary changes. These could have all changed the gut microbiome. So bit of a chicken and an egg situation at the moment, but it is animal studies are at least suggesting maybe the former, that the gut microbiome could actually be a driving force in terms of some of the development of these diseases. Now, factors that affect the gut microbiome, and this is why when we're looking at that research, at least clinically, it can be really exciting because there are so many factors, as Alana mentioned, that impact our gut microbiome. There's everything from age and genetics, so things we don't have so much control over, as well as medications, antibiotics being an obvious one, but non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs like your ibuprofens, they can all negatively impact the diversity of your gut microbiome. But then there are things that we do have a little bit more control over. Lifestyle factors. So too much stress, not enough physical activity, not enough sleep. Don't know if any of that's sounding familiar, but that can significantly reduce your gut microbiome diversity. And then, of course, there's diet. Now, when it comes to diet, this is why I love gut health so much. I used to work in policy, and in the UK at least, we really bang on the drum of kind of negative nutrition. You know, what can we take away? What can we take away? Reduce salt, reduce sugar, and yes, they're important messages, but actually when it comes to gut health, it's all about inclusion, not exclusion. Think about what you can add to your diet, more diversity, more plants, more fiber. When I spoke to Alana at the beginning, I was like, what are you mentioning? She was like, yeah, we're talking about fiber. And I was like, okay, me too. But I don't think we can bang on the drum enough. So yeah, I'm going to spend a few more slides on fiber at the moment. But yeah, it's all about increasing diversity. And this is the so when we look at kind of observational research, so simply just looking at certain individuals and checking out their gut microbiome, we see the individuals that have sort of a Mediterranean style diet, shall we say, lots of fresh plants, produce, legumes, all those really rich, diverse, fibrous foods, we see that they have that diverse gut microbiome, whereas the lady on the left, on your right, the lady on the right, she has, you know, more of a typical Western diet where, you know, high fat, high sugar, high salt, ultra-processed foods. This is where we see that lack in diversity. So this idea that diversity breeds diversity really came from this research study that Alana took part of, where thousands and thousands of poo samples were analysed, and we looked at people's diets. And what we saw was that individuals who ate 30 different plants a week had a far more diverse gut microbiome than individuals who only ate 10. So this is where that that saying, you are what you eat, is absolutely true when it comes to your gut microbiome. And that's because you can kind of think of your microbes as like fussy eaters, like each and every one of us. You know, they like to eat on different fibers. So the more plants you can get in, the more different fibers you can get in, the more you're going to be feeding them. They're able to flourish and grow and start increasing the other good bacteria that are in your gut. So here's my dietary fiber. It's not as pretty as Alana's, but bear with me. I'm banging on the drum at least still. So, you know, I know for some of us in here, you might be sat there thinking, I don't even think I eat 5 a day, and now this woman's up there telling me I need to eat 30 plants a week. She's got to be kidding me. But as Alana said, you know, when you think plants, it's not just fruits and vegetables. When we're talking about dietary fiber overall, you know, that's your whole grain pastas, your whole grain cereals, and legumes and pulses like chickpeas, any beans you can get in are fantastic sources of dietary fiber, and it really is all about these kind of like little swaps that you can do. If you're someone that's always, I don't know, snacking on peanuts throughout the day, make it mixed nuts. If you're always topping your porridge or cereal in the morning with just strawberries, get mixed berries. Really utilize the frozen aisle. You know, they all come pre-mixed these days down there in veggies and etc. If you're making chili con carne, don't just add your kidney beans, make it mixed beans. All these little things can go a massive, massive way. So yeah, we've got resources on all like little tips and tricks on how you can increase your diet diversity. So come talk to us at the stand if you want any of this. So moving away from fiber, you'll be pleased to hear, but talking more about gut health trends. These are your fermented foods and your probiotics that are really having a moment at the moment. So what are they? Well, fermented foods are essentially a source of live dietary microbes. So rather than feeding your microbes with the food that they like, i.e. fiber, you can sort of cheat a little and start taking the live good bacteria themselves. That's the premise, essentially, of fermented foods. It's everything from yogurt, kombucha, kimchi, tofu, tempeh, and it's funny that they're like hitting the shelves at the moment because they have literally been consumed by humans for over 14,000 years. The fermentation process itself can be really beneficial for the food product. It can, we see from the research that it can also, eating fermented foods can increase your gut microbiome diversity. But this is where it comes in because people often, I work at Yakult, people will often say, what's the difference between taking some Greek yogurt or just normal yogurt and a probiotic, for example? Well, this is because not all fermented foods actually contain live bacteria, and not all fermented foods will meet the criteria or the definition of a probiotic. So the best way I can explain this to you is my least favorite part of the presentation, where I put a big X and a red box through two of my favorite food groups, wine and bread. But they're real, obvious examples of fermented foods which don't contain live bacteria. I don't know if you have any bake-off fans in the audience, but if I take bread as an example, you add yeast to the recipe. So that's a live microbe that you're adding into the recipe. You then get this lovely rise of the bread. Paul Hollywood's very happy with you, so you shove it in the oven. And that process of shoving it in the oven, exposing it to all that heat, essentially kills off the bacteria. So when you're then having the bread, you're not actually consuming any live bacteria. It's the same with wine. After the fermentation, and beer, I'm afraid, after the fermentation process, there's no live bacteria in the final products. So if you are wanting to experiment with fermented foods, add them as a little accessory into your diet, then just make sure you're looking on the packet to see if it contains live bacterial strains, or, it'll have italic Latin words like lactobacillus or bifidobacteria. These are two of the most commonly researched bacteria known to have beneficial effects on the human body. Okay, so that's how we can feed our gut microbiome, and I am incredibly passionate about this field, and this is really why. Not only are there so many ways in which we can modify the gut microbiome, but the gut microbiome is talking to almost every and any system and organ in the body. There's kind of nothing, I think, that it can't do. At Yakult, we call it kind of the conductor of health, constantly orchestrating with so many different organs and systems. In the interest of time today, I'm only going to focus on the gut-brain axis and the gut-immune axis. And to do that, we're going to need to take a trip to Vegas. Play ball here. Has anyone been to Vegas? Raise a hand. I will. Yes, thank you. Okay. So I will pick on you. No, I'm joking. But you've heard the saying, right? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Yeah, most of us. Now they're starting to get a bit worried who did put their hand up, because I'm afraid to say what happens in Vegas does not stay in Vegas, ladies and gentlemen, and that I am referring to the vagus nerve, because your vagus nerve connects your gut to your brain, and this is known as the gut-brain axis. It is the scientifically proven link between the gut and the brain. As Alana said, it's in our everyday English language. I've got butterflies, I'm sick to my stomach. All of these are examples of your gut-brain axis at play. As Alana said, 90% of the communication is going from your gut to your brain. And we're now discovering through lots of different exciting research about how your gut microbes specifically help those messages. So your vagus nerve, you can kind of think it as like the direct telephone line or the highway from your gut to your brain. But your microbes are kind of that annoying WhatsApp group that is constantly pinging messages at you. That's your microbes coming into play and also communicating with your brain. Now, we don't have much research kind of in humans. It's coming, but in terms of mechanisms and really seeing this at play, we're relying heavily on animal studies. So as Alana said, we're not at a point right now, as exciting as the research is, of kind of like we can't say, treat your microbiome and treat your depression, but it's kind of where the research is going, but it's a lot in animal studies. But IBS, so irritable bowel syndrome, is a real clear example of where we see the gut-brain axis at play. Unfortunately, we can't, not many people are signing up to get their vagus nerves severed, so we are relying mechanistically on animal studies. But the IBS example really shows it in real time. So irritable bowel syndrome affects around 20% of the population, and far more in women, actually. And it causes, incredibly uncomfortable gut symptoms for patients. And it can be really difficult to sort of know the triggers and these types of things. And it was back in 2016 that it was then not classified no longer as a functional gut disorder, but actually a dysregulation of the gut-brain axis. And what we see in IBS patients is that their gut symptoms worsen during periods of stress and anxiety, and that those individuals are more likely to experience poor mental health. You might have experienced this on a day-to-day. Say, you eat a high-fiber meal, nice, you set up, you have this lovely salad for lunch or something, and on one day, and you feel absolutely fine, no gut symptoms, nothing. But you eat the exact same meal another day, but you've had a really crap day. It's just been stress, emails, the lot, it's just been non-stop. Your kids are moaning, everything's miserable, it's raining, it's a typical English day, and you just feel rubbish, and you have that meal, you're stressed as hell, and then you're like, I'm bloated, I'm this, I'm that. It might not be to do with the dietary components at all, but actually all to do with your mental state at that point. And this is what we see in IBS patients. But what's so exciting about it is, from a practitioner point of view, is that we have two avenues that we can target. Yes, we can go down the diet route, but we can also start targeting the brain. And this is where, some of the research is going. Personally, I love gut health because I'm someone, I see myself very much as a nutrition scientist, but I take part in all the woo-woo things, and I always have. My mum brought me up on homeopathy and all the likes of it. I meditate every day, and I always thought, I kind of can't show that side of my personality or how part of me. Because it's not scientific enough. And I don't think, 10 years ago we ever would have seen research like this coming into kind of Western medicine. But gut health kind of is that intersection between East meets West, and science meets spirituality. And we are starting to see now these kind of more, seen as woo-woo techniques, meditation, yoga, breath work, all being utilized for IBS patients specifically with really positive outcomes. So this is something that I absolutely love, more of this holistic approach, and I'm absolutely going to keep banging this drum. And I can't kind of leave the gut-brain space without talking about the importance of sleep. So the sleep, we definitely see that if people with chronic jet lag or night shift workers, they are more likely to experience that dysbiosis, that imbalance in their gut microbiome through lack of sleep. So that's another exciting area of research as well. Okay, final bit is on the gut immune axis. Winter is approaching, not that we had much of a summer, but a lot of the time we talk about boosting our immune system, taking all the supplements and these kind of things. Please don't ever boost your immune system. If you do that, it's essentially causing an autoimmune disease is what happens. So yeah, what you want is a supported and balanced immune system, and this is where focusing on your gut health can really come into play. Your gut and your immune system are constantly talking to each other, and it's actually your gut microbes that train your immune system from birth. So you can kind of think of your gut microbes as the teacher. So imagine me, I'm your gut microbes, and you're the pupils, and some protein from food comes in, and I'll say to you, oh, that's just an innocent bystander, the microbes are telling you, just listen to me, don't touch that, you don't need to touch that. But then a virus comes in, and they'll say to the immune cells, the microbes will, okay, that's a problem, start attacking that. But if you don't have a well-functioning gut microbiome and that communication breaks down, that's when you can start to see problems. For example, if they start attacking the innocent bystander, the protein in food, this can cause a food allergy, for example, or if you don't start attacking the virus, that's when you can come down with cold and flu, for example. So a final slide on oranges. Why? Because cold and flu season is approaching, and often we're then scrambling for oranges, vitamin C, that kind of thing. Ascorbic acid, it absolutely can reduce symptoms, the time at which you are symptomatic for cold and flu. However, probiotics, so those live dietary microbes known to have a beneficial effect on your health, things like lactobacillus and bifidobacteria, those particular strains can reduce, if you're taking them, can reduce your chance of actually contracting an upper respiratory tract infection by 50% and reduce the length of time for which you have symptoms. Okay, we made it, folks. It wouldn't be an industry talk if I didn't plug something. So Holly is over there. Give us a wave, Hol. She's not even listening. It's good, good. Yeah, so we have lots of resources for healthcare professionals, all on the things that I have just spoken about, the gut-immune axis, the gut-brain axis. Oh, and then my final thing to say is I know that I've given you a whistle-stop tour of what is emerging in the science space, but I want to say that, yes, the science may be complicated, but looking after your gut health absolutely doesn't have to. These are all things that my granny told me and her granny before that, and I think she'd be laughing at me, looking down on me, going, do they just hand out PhDs these days if this is what you're telling people is the take-home message? But it really is. It's eat your fruits and vegetables, you know, get as many high-fiber plants in there as possible, make sure you're capturing enough sleep, try and zen when you can, take a few deep breaths. Hydration is so key, especially when you're upping your fiber intake, and exercise. Move your body in a way that feels good for you. It's all the simple things in life, and it's the same when it comes to our gut health. It can be as simple as possible, but I know sometimes these are the pillars that go out the window on a stressful day. So it is just kind of coming back to the basics, even though as exciting as the research is, even the hottest stuff that's coming off the press at the moment, it all comes back, that science, when we try and put it into practice, it's all coming back to these pillars. So finally, I, yes, work at Yakult, but I head up the Yakult Science for Health, which is separate to the commercial side of the business. They do not pay me to sell Yakult. Instead, I am here to basically educate healthcare professionals on the space of the gut microbiome. What we do is we read up and we run research in the area to hopefully help you in your everyday clinical care, caring for patients. We have new resources for patients, etc., and for any healthcare professionals, we have a webinar going on tomorrow, completely for free, all about how our gut microbes are talking to our brain. So if you do want to come to that, sign up on the QR code. And if anyone's interested in coming to Amsterdam, we're running an international Yakult symposium where we have leading experts across the world coming to talk about basically everything that I've spoken in a far more eloquent way than I've done today. So for that, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. You're all amazing. Thank you.